Good morning, Grace Family Church. If we haven't met before, I'm Hal Mayer. I'm one of the teaching pastors here at Grace. I want to welcome all of you here this morning, all of you that are sitting in this room, those of you that are watching online, of course, at all of our 8 campuses, as we continue in our study of the book of John. And I just want to answer a question that I've been getting that doesn't really have to do with the book of John, but Pastor Craig is not gone. He's on sabbatical. After 31 years of ministry, I guess you deserve a summer off. And so he is doing that, but I need your prayers for him right now to rest, because I don't know if Pastor Craig knows how to rest. I'm pretty sure he's going to be coming back with like 20 messages already written. But what we're going to be talking about today is really what we see Jesus doing a lot through the book of John and in his ministry, is kind of redefining what it means to be a Christ follower. Redefining what it means to truly follow after God. And this is something that I think we run into ourselves, can be tough to do, because it's hard to help somebody understand something when they think they already know the meaning to it. And we see this with different words and even different phrases. I'll give you an example. How about this phrase, in a minute? That phrase means something very different depending on who you're talking to, right? Like I've noticed this as a parent. What I mean by in a minute and what my kids mean by in a minute is very different. Like if I ask my son, hey, I need you to take out the trash, and he'll like, okay, I'll do it. I'm like, when are you gonna do it? And he says, in a minute. My idea of a minute, and maybe this has changed, is 60 seconds. His idea of a minute is when he's done with doing what he did, but also remembers to do it, which could be a day or 2 days later. But look, I'll give him grace, because here's why. Because my version of in a minute actually changes when my wife tells me to do something. Like my version of in a minute changes, and I've tried to explain this to my wife. When I say in a minute, what I'm referring to is a football game minute. Like after the 2-minute warning. Like every time the ball goes out of bounds, the clock stops. Every time there's a first down, there's some timeouts in there and some commercial breaks. So it could be anywhere from a minute to 20 minutes, you know? But here's what I'm saying. Jesus is trying to come into this world that has an understanding or a belief in who God is and the way that we worship him, the way we live out this life, and he's trying to change. And last week we talked about this. All of our location pastors talked about Nicodemus and him and being a Pharisee. And can we give it up for our location pastors? They did a great job this past week. But he was talking to a Pharisee who is very on the side of religious-based ideas, and you have to do these things and this thing. It's more about ritual than it is about relationship. And this week we're going to be talking about somebody on the opposite spectrum. Jesus has a conversation with somebody that we never expect him to have a conversation with, that is the totally opposite of a religious leader who is a male. We go to the other side where he's talking to a woman that is Samaritan. And the idea that he's even talking to a woman is a huge deal in this time. And what we actually see Jesus doing throughout his ministry, and especially in this story, is he brings respect and he brings honor to women where many didn't. Women did not have a lot of rights in that time, yet for some reason we see Jesus sit down with her. And he's sitting down with this Samaritan woman, and we may have talked about this before. You've heard us say this before. The Jewish people hated the Samaritan people. They had a deep hatred. In fact, they actually looked at them and they would call them half-breeds, which is an awful, awful thing that should never be spoken by someone who says they love God. But the reason they hated the Samaritans actually goes back to after King Solomon. See, King Solomon reigned over the Israelite nation, but then when his sons took over, they split the kingdom into the northern kingdom and southern kingdom. The northern kingdom was actually conquered by the Assyrians, and the Assyrians did what many empires do. They take some of your population, they move them into their empire, and they take some of their population and move it into your place to make sure riots don't happen, like assimilation of culture happens. Well, during this time, the Jewish people started to do something that God told them not to do. They started to marry people of an opposite faith. See, it wasn't a problem that they married somebody of a different nationality. The problem was they married somebody of an opposite faith. And when you marry somebody of an opposite faith, it leads to problems. It's the reason why we see in the Old Testament, also in the New Testament, what does it say? We need to be equally yoked. And I need us to understand this, and those for you that are single in the room, it's very important for you to marry somebody of the same faith, because it's really hard for them to know you if they don't know your God. And we see this in statistics. If a Christian marries somebody of the opposite faith, the divorce rate's over 50%. If they marry somebody who is atheist or agnostic, the divorce rate's over 60%. And you may have heard, well, it's the same in the church, and that's not true. See, when they did those surveys, they just asked, are you a Christian? And there's a lot of people in America that would say they're a Christian that don't live it out. In fact, when you live the Christian life, it changes our marriage drastically. They say just by attending a weekly church service, your chance of divorce goes down by upwards of 50%. But if they say this, if you pray with your spouse, if you worship with your spouse, and you both serve, your divorce rate goes down to about 10%. And so what they're doing in this moment is they're doing the opposite of what God said. And the problems is this, is not only are they marrying somebody of a different faith, but they're accepting many of these different faiths' beliefs into the Jewish faith. And they actually get to a place where they don't believe the entire Bible, only the first 5 books of the Bible, but they actually change the first 5 books of the Bible, and they start to accept other practices. This is called syncretism. We see this nowadays. You see Christian people bring in Hindu practices or Buddhist practices or New Age practices with crystals and horoscopes and things like that, and they put it into something that is not at all the worship of God. And they're doing this, and what you see happening, and it turns into a cult, and with every cult, what you see happening is you see sexual deviance at another level, and on top of it, they even accepted child sacrifice. So when the Jewish people saw the Samaritans, they hated them because they had taken their faith and they turned it into something else. And on top of it, when Nehemiah goes back to rebuild the temple, the Samaritans come in and say, hey, can we help you out? And Nehemiah says no, so they start their own place of worship on a place called Mount Gerizim, and their own theology and their own things. And so when I say that the Jewish people despised the Samaritans, it was a deep, deep hatred because they didn't like what they did to their faith. And the fact that the Samaritans actually claimed to be the true worshipers of God. And so when we see Jesus sit down with a Samaritan woman, this is a big deal. So we're gonna start off in John chapter 4, verse 1, and we're gonna see this story. It starts off with this. It says, now when Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was making and baptizing more disciples than John, although Jesus himself did not baptize, but only his disciples, he left Judea and departed again for Galilee. Now notice this, it said Jesus didn't do the baptizing. And if you wonder, why wasn't Jesus baptizing? I think it's simple. Because if somebody were to come up to you and go, hey, I'm a Christian, I decided to get baptized, like, well, who baptized you? Well, Andrew did. That's great. Jesus baptized me. It would create a little bit of a hierarchy. It says, at the end, in verse 4, he says, and he had to pass through Samaria. Now we read that, and the Jewish people at that time wouldn't agree with that. Jesus didn't have to pass through Samaria. In fact, most Jewish people wouldn't pass through Samaria. What's interesting is where Jesus is at to Galilee, through Samaria would be a 3-day journey. Most Jewish people would go around Samaria, and it would be a 6-day journey. I've got to tell you something. You've got to really not want to talk to someone to spend an extra 3 days walking through the desert. Like, that's another level of hatred that we see. But what we see Jesus doing is he didn't have to go through Samaria because he needed to save time. He had to go through Samaria because there was a spiritual encounter that he needed to have with one of the image bearers of God. So my question for you is this, is what is it that God's called you to do? Like, what is it that you have to do? What is it that he said that you need to do? Is it that you need to forgive someone? Is it that you need to serve someone? Is it that you need to go and you need to tell somebody about him and preach the gospel to somebody? Is it that you need to pray for someone? Because church, hear me on this. Whenever God calls you to do something, there will always be an off-ramp that takes you around Samaria. There will always be an off-ramp that tells you, hey, you don't really need to do that. Take the easy way out. But what we see Jesus doing is going directly towards what God has purpose for him. So in verse 5 it says this, so he came to the town of Samaria called Sychar, near the field that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, so Jesus, wearied as he was from his journey, was sitting beside the well. It was about the 6th hour. Now, they tell time a little bit different. Their day starts at 6, so it's about noon at this time. And what I love about this verse is it reminds us that Jesus is human. It says what? He was weary, he was tired, and he was hungry. I've been there. I've been there. And Jesus is in the same place, and he's tired. And what happens in the next verse shows us that he continues to care. In verse 7, it says, a woman from Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, give me a drink. For his disciples had gone away to the city to buy food. I get people that ask me all the time, why did all the disciples have to go into the city to buy food? Why didn't anybody stay with Jesus? I think all the women in the room who have sent their husbands to the store without a list understand this. Right? You send him for milk and he comes back with ice cream. So apparently it takes 12 men to actually get the right thing. It says, the Samaritan woman said to him, how is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria? And John fills this in. He says, for Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. See, this time it would have been culturally inappropriate for a man really to just talk to a woman. Actually, it would be grounds for divorce if he did that. But it's also incredibly culturally inappropriate for a rabbi to talk to a woman, much less a rabbi talk to a Samaritan woman in this moment. And on top of that, he's asking her for a drink. What we may not know is this, is actually in Jewish culture, if you drank from or ate from something owned by a Samaritan, you would be considered unclean. This is racism. Right, this reminds us of the Jim Crow laws back in the day where we had to have separate water fountains and separate eating places and separate bathrooms. They are basically saying that this group of people is unclean. This is wrong. But in this moment, he chooses to talk to this woman, and the question is, why would he choose to talk to her? Because I think he recognizes her situation. He recognizes that this woman is coming to draw water in the middle of the day, which is not normal. Normally you would come to draw water in the cool of the day, so you're coming in the morning or at night. She's coming in the middle of the day. Why? Because this is a woman that doesn't want to be around anybody else. This is a woman that's an outcast. She's somebody that doesn't want to deal with anybody else in this town. And she is doing this in the heat of the day. Like, I think for us to understand this, it's kind of like, for those of you that are new to Tampa, you may not know it, but July and August are awful. They are. So similarly, I would see this Samaritan woman going to the well in the same way that I see people when they're running around noon. I'm like, why do you hate yourself? Like when they take their dog for a walk, I'm like, why do you hate your dog? Right, I actually feel like this. It's really hard to speak to Tampa during July and August about hell because many of us feel we're already there. But that's what she's doing. She's going in the middle of the day. It is the hottest part of the day, and she's there. This woman is a cast-off. She doesn't want to be around people. But what we see in this moment is something very simple. Jesus doesn't care about gender. He doesn't care about ethnicity. He doesn't care about religion. All he sees in this moment is somebody made in the image of God who is hurting. See, we've got to get this, church. Jesus' love crosses all barriers. All barriers. And if Jesus' love crosses all barriers, if we're called to be like Jesus, our love should cross all barriers. There's a pastor by the name of Brian Loritz that said it this way. He says, the gospel compels us into strange relationships. And I love that because what the gospel tends to do is it tends to cause us to have to talk to people that are not like us, that don't have the same background as us, that don't look like us, that are living on a different side of town than us, that have different jobs than us. And what Jesus is saying in this moment, there shouldn't be a barrier that keeps you from telling somebody about him. So, are there any barriers in your heart? Is there anybody that if Jesus said, I want you to tell them about Jesus, you would pause? Because we've got to think about that. We've got to know that right now because we've got to deal with that because that's a heart issue. Because if at any point we decide that we're unwilling to go tell somebody about Jesus, we're basically saying that is an image bearer of God that doesn't deserve God's love. And that's a problem. And what Jesus is showing is there is no barrier that's too big to cross. And what he's doing in this moment is he's not just having a conversation with her. He's bringing to her what she truly desires and what she truly needs. In John 4:10, we pick up the conversation. It says, Jesus answered her, if you knew the gift of God and who it was that was saying to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. The woman said to him, sir, you have nothing to draw water with, and the well is deep. The well is about 100 feet deep. It says, where do you get that living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob? He gave us the well and drank from it himself and did his sons and livestock. See, she's not getting what Jesus is saying. Like, he's talking about an eternal water. She's looking at, hey, I just want water. Like, she's focused on the physical right in front of her. And we can understand that when we look back at that. It's something that we don't deal with as much now because when we're thirsty, we readily have water available, right? Like, we're never in a place where we're like, oh no, I may not be able to find water. In fact, I feel like most days, like now, why is it that women always have like 3 beverages in front of them at all times? Like the Stanley, the coffee, and then something fizzy? Like today, if we're thirsty, or if any moment we go, man, I feel a little bit dehydrated, we grab a water, we grab a Gatorade. In that time, dehydration could mean death. So her focus on the temporary is not a problem, but because of her focus on the temporary, she's missing that supernatural that Jesus is trying to show her. And here's what we can grab. We've got to be careful in life to be so focused on the temporary that we miss the eternal. Be so focused on what's right in front of us and what we think we need, and we miss what we truly need and what Jesus has to offer. See, what Jesus also does in this moment is he doesn't get angry at her, because he could have in this moment, because she's talking about Jacob and Jacob's well. She's talking about these things. He doesn't get mad, the fact that she's claiming Jacob as her forefather. He just continues in the conversation. It says this, Jesus said to her, everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never be thirsty again. The water that I will give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life. The woman said to him, sir, give me this water so that I will not be thirsty or have to come here to draw water. Like, this is the moment where you go, Jesus, she's on the hook. Like she wants the water that you have. This is the moment where you close. Like, this is the moment where you're sharing your faith with somebody and they go, well, I want what you have. And you go, okay, so let's pray this prayer together. Like, Jesus, why aren't you praying the prayer with her? Like, why aren't you going, hey, do you want to accept me as the Lord and Savior of your life? Then pray this prayer after me, right? Like, why isn't Jesus doing that? Because Jesus in this moment realizes that her just understanding what he says is not the point. He wants to get to the heart. And what Jesus does next, I believe this, that if the disciples were around, they're going, what are you doing, Jesus? Because what Jesus chooses to do in that moment is he chooses to bring out of her heart the thing that she is filled with guilt and shame from. The reason that she is coming to the well at noon, the reason that she's afraid to be around other people, he just brings it out. It says, Jesus said to her, go call your husband and come here. The woman answered him, I have no husband. Jesus said to her, you are right in saying I have no husband, for you have had 5 husbands, and the one you have now is not your husband. What you have said is true. See, we get now why she's at the well at noon. There's a good chance that if she were to go to the well at another time, there would be a woman there that's married to one of her former husbands. And there's a lot of ideas of why she's been divorced 5 times. Some people say maybe all of her husbands had died. People died much younger back then, but most people believe this. The reason she's probably had 5 husbands is because she was barren. She was unfertile. She didn't have the ability to have a baby. And back then, if you were not able to give your husband a baby, he would divorce you. And so she's had 5 husbands take advantage of her, and she so badly wants someone to be with her that she's choosing to live with the 6th. She's an outcast. And what we see in the story is Jesus sits with outcasts. Like we see throughout Jesus' story, he doesn't just sit with outcasts, he sits with people that are called notorious sinners. He sits with the worst of the worst. He sits with people that the religious leaders wouldn't even be caught in a room with. Jesus has a conversation with. And we've got to get that, because what this tells us is in those moments where we've messed up, in those moments of guilt and shame that we have, what the enemy will try to tell you is God is running away from you, when in fact he's actually pulling up a chair to sit with you. He wants to be with you. He wants to talk to you. He actually wants to get to know you and get to the basis of why you're running in this moment. See, Jesus, he sees your need, he seeks your heart, and he supplies your soul. He's not just there for a conversation. He really wants to get down to why this is happening, what he can do, and how he can make you whole again. See, in this moment, he sees her true need, what she's been placing her identity in. Because her identity at this point is placed in who she's married to or who she's been married to. And her true need, what she believes her true need is to find a man that will stay. What's interesting is that Jesus sets us up in a place that has so much imagery tied to it. It's one of those moments in the Bible where you read it and you go, did Jesus do this on purpose? And the answer is yes, probably. But he's with her at a well, and to us, it just, what's the big deal? It's like meeting somebody at a water fountain. But at a well, you actually see throughout the Bible, it's the place where many people found their spouse. We actually see Jacob find his spouse at the well. We see Moses find his spouse at the well. We actually see Isaac, one of the servants of Abraham, goes to find a wife for him and finds him at a well. And all the single people are in the room are going, where's the well? But Jesus sees her true need. See, this woman is lonely, she's outcast, she's shame-filled. All the men in her life have basically taken from her and given nothing back, and Jesus is the first man who is actually loving her for who she is, caring for her. And he sees past the need that she thinks she truly desires, and he's getting ready to show her what she truly needs. See, Jesus, he met her at a place where so many of us are looking for something that we think we need, but he offers us something more. See, I'll say this. I think the reason we have so many broken relationships in the world right now is we tend to give responsibility to our spouse that only God can have responsibility for, needs that only he can fill. And I know that we do this because we use phrases that we shouldn't use. And I'm going to say this, and look, I don't want you to feel bad for using this phrase. I just don't want you to use it anymore. And it's a phrase that it sounds really romantic. And guys picked it up after the movie Jerry Maguire. And it's that usually guys use it when they're in trouble. It's that, you complete me. You complete me. Oh, she just completes me. Oh, he just completes me. No, they don't. No, they don't. In fact, here's the problem. Whenever we put our spouse in that place, we're actually making them an idol. And here's the problem. Idols never follow through on their promises. And what tends to happen in those moments is we're actually setting up ourselves and our marriage for failure. And you may not have thought of this, but when we choose to say our spouse completes us, what does that say about single people? What does that say about Jesus or Paul? They were single. Are you saying that they're missing out on everything? See, what we've got to get is this, is that people don't complete us, they actually complement us. The friends that we choose to have around us complement who we already are. Our spouse complements who we already are. Jesus is the only one that completes us. He's the only one that can satisfy our heart. He's the only one that can satisfy our soul. He's the only one that can satisfy the longing that we have for acceptance, for forgiveness, and for wholeness. See, Jesus reaches into her heart and brings out the thing that causes her biggest shame. Why? Because he wants to free her heart. It's like, you can't keep this in the dark anymore. So my question that I really want us to understand, because this is something we're going to talk about at the end, is what are you keeping in the dark? What is it that you won't give to Jesus? What guilt, what shame, what sin? What thing that you did or has happened to you that you're not willing to lay at the feet of Jesus, and you're just keeping in the dark? Here's the problem, guys. When we try to fight the devil in the dark, we lose. But when we bring it to the light, Jesus always wins. So what is it that we're choosing in this moment to not give to him? Because when we're in the dark, what tends to happen is this, is that the enemy tries to help us understand. He tells us and he lies to us and says, you're defined by your failures. You're defined by these things. You're defined by your wounds. You're defined by your scars. You're defined by your pain. Jesus says, no, you're defined by my wounds, my scars, and my pain. That's who you are, and that's how much you matter. So we bring our depression, we bring our addiction, we bring our abuse to Jesus. Why? Because he is the only one that can heal it. He's the only one that can actually bring purpose to our pain. He's the only one that can make us whole. Because if we choose to stay in bondage and just settle for what the world has to offer, we will miss out totally on the one who made the world. So what is it that you're keeping in the dark? Jesus reveals this to her. And you can imagine in this moment, it's kind of a tense moment. Like there's tenseness. And what she does is what I think we tend to do in these moments, is she kind of deflects. In verse 19, we see this. It says, the woman said to him, "Sir, I perceive that you're a prophet." It's a good guess, right? But then she does something. She just goes in this random theological question. She goes, "Our fathers worship on the mountain." He's talking about Mount Gerizim. "But you say that in Jerusalem is the place where people ought to worship." Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews." She throws this random theological question in there. I don't know if you guys have ever been there before, where you're just sharing your faith with somebody, you're having this deep conversation, and all of a sudden they go, But what about dinosaurs? Or what if a guy's stuck on an island and he never meets anybody? Or this is the one that always gets me. Can God create a rock bigger than he can lift? Why does that matter? I was in a conversation one time with a guy about just family and God and all this stuff. We're sitting down in a booth at a restaurant and we're talking and it's getting really intense. And then all of a sudden he just pauses and he just looks off and I'm thinking, okay, he's thinking about it. We're getting somewhere. And he just looks at me, he goes, and I'm like, yes, what? He goes, if the Bucks really get their offensive line right, I think they can win the championship. Like, that was the moment I'm like, all right, we got to take a step back. We've gone too far. But what's interesting is Jesus continues on, and he actually answers her question. With grace and truth, he goes, actually, the Jewish people do have it right. They do, but this is the way that you can worship God. And he explains to her how the paradigm is going to shift. In verse 23, he says this, but the hour is coming and now is here when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father is seeking such people to worship him. Notice this, God is not seeking worship, he's seeking true worshipers. It says, God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. The woman said to him, I know that Messiah is coming, he who is called Christ. When he comes, he will tell us all things. Jesus said to her, I who speak to you am he. He reveals to himself to her. He explains to her what true worship looks like. And the reason he's doing this is because he wants her to understand it's not about the fact that you are worshiping at a certain level. It's not about how much faith you have in something, how much passion you have for something, how much devotion you have to something. It's how much faith, passion, and devotion you have for the right person. Because if we put faith, passion, and devotion into the wrong person or the wrong thing, it will always come up empty. Because we live in a world today that says, well, as long as you have faith, as long as you have passion, and Jesus is saying no. In this moment, he's explaining to her, you are wholeheartedly devoted to the wrong God. But Jesus reveals himself. Why? Because he wants her to understand what true worship looks like, what authentic worship looks like. See, here's what authentic worship is, according to this passage, is authentic worship is our whole heart responding to the whole truth of God. Our whole heart responding to the whole truth. When it says to worship God in spirit, what it's referring to is all of us. Mind, body, soul, spirit, all of us worshiping God. But he also says you need to worship God in truth, which means this, you need to be worshiping the true God. It's the reason why we study this. It's the reason why we want you to dive into this. Because here's why. If you don't know who God is, you will make up your own God. And that's what we tend to do. We tend to make up our own God. And our God tends to think like us, believe like us, and hate the same people as us. And what he's saying in this moment, he goes, no, you need to make sure that you are worshiping the true God, the one that has power. See, worship is important. We're created to worship. And when we choose to worship God, we're actually choosing not to worship other things. The answer to stop worshiping people is to worship God. The answer to stop worshiping experiences or things is to worship God. Now, when I talk about worship, I'm not just talking about singing. Worship is everything we do for God. It's prayer, it's reading our Bible, it's serving others, it's caring for our family. All of these things are worship. But one of the things that he gets to is that you no longer have to go to a temple to worship God because his presence is already in you. It's like if you're a child of God, you're actually the temple of God, which means we can worship wherever we're at. We can worship in a car, we can worship in our house, we can worship on a walk. We can worship when things are good and when things are bad because God is always there. But here's the problem that I want us to end with and understand. We cannot worship God fully if part of our heart is blocked. If part of our heart is kept away from him. If part of our heart has a barrier to him. So what's blocking your heart? What sin, what shame, what guilt have you yet to give to Jesus? See, we know this, that when you bring it to Jesus, you gain freedom. And we see this in this woman's life because after Jesus talks to her, she actually runs into town, talks to everyone and says, hey, come see the man that told me everything about myself. She goes from somebody that didn't want to be noticed at all to somebody that wanted to be noticed because she's found a new freedom in Jesus. Because she's no longer defined by the men that had left her, she's defined by her God. See, we know this wasn't plan A for her life. But with God, we know that he can take things that were meant for evil and turn them to good. We know this, that there's no condemnation for those in Christ Jesus. We know this, right? We've said this. We've actually probably said this to somebody who is going through a tough time or trying to get past a sin. We've said, hey, there's no condemnation for those in Christ Jesus. But look, there's a big difference from saying that and believing it. Because when we believe it, we actually take the things that are in our heart and we give it to God. We place it at the foot of the cross. We believe that when Jesus said, it is finished, it was. That sin no longer had power in our life. That when we bring things into the light, Jesus is the one that heals them. Jesus wants you to have peace. He wants you to have freedom. He wants you to have joy. He wants you to have fulfillment. And he wants you to stop dragging that thing behind you that's keeping you from him. So what we're going to do in this moment is we're just going to have a little bit of a time of prayer. I'm going to lead us through it. I'm going to pray through it. But here's what I would love for you to do is not really listen to what I'm saying. I want you to spend some time with God, some time with Jesus to unload the thing that only he can deal with. Right now, I'm going to ask the prayer team on every campus to come up. If you need prayer during this time, if you just need somebody to intercede for you, to pray with you and for you, they're going to be here. But if we could bow our heads and close our eyes. God, I just pray in this moment that you would shine a light on what it is that is keeping us from you. God, please shine a light on the pain, the shame, the guilt, the thing that we're so afraid to give to you. God, I pray you give us the courage to lay it at your feet right now. God, I just pray in this moment for those that have been carrying a weight too heavy for themselves. A weight that the enemy has been telling them that they deserve. God, I pray they let go of that in this moment. God, I pray for those that have opened their heart in this moment and are allowing you to work in their life maybe for the first time. God, I pray that you'd surround them. Surround them with people that love you and would help them see that they are loved. To encourage them as they continue to believe that there is no condemnation for those that believe in you. God, I pray that no one would leave today without at least starting the process of handing over to you the thing that only you can bear. God, I pray that they would see your love, your kindness, that the sin, the shame, and the guilt has not caused you to run away, but has caused you to pull up a chair, to sit next to them, to listen to them, to cry with them, but to help them become the whole person that you want them to be. God, I thank you that you are a God that loves us that much. God, we know that your love, that nothing can separate us from it. God, I pray that we wouldn't just know that, we would believe that. God, I pray that we would understand now that wherever we are at in our life, we can always bring whatever is on our heart to you. God, we thank you for that. And in Jesus' name I pray, amen. Hey. Right now I'm gonna ask the location pastors to just continue in the service.